Hello, this is day 77 of reading one canto of the Divine Comedy every day. We are on Paradiso, Canto 10, which I'll read from the Longfellow translation before giving some quick comments. Looking into his Son with all the love which each of them eternally breathes forth, the primal and unutterable power, whatever before the mind or eye revolves with so much order made, there can be none who this beholds without enjoying him. Lift up then, reader, to the lofty wheels with me thy vision straight unto that part where the one motion on the other strikes, and there begin to contemplate with joy that master's art, who in himself so loves it that never doth his eye depart therefrom. Behold how from that point goes branching off the oblique circle which conveys the planets to satisfy the world that calls upon them. And if their pathway were not thus inflected, much virtue in the heavens would be in vain, and almost every power below here dead. If from the straight line distant more or less were the departure, much would wanting be above and underneath of mundane order. Remain now, reader, still upon thy bench, in thought pursuing that which is foretasted, if thou wouldst jocund be instead of weary. I've set before thee, henceforth feed thyself, for to itself diverteth all my care that theme whereof I have been made the scribe. The greatest of the ministers of nature, who with the power of heaven the world imprints, and measures with his light the time for us, with that part which is above is called to mind conjoined, along the spirals was revolving, where each time earlier he presents himself. And I was with him, but of the ascending I was not conscious, saving as a man of a first thought is conscious ere it come. And Beatrice, she who is seen to pass from good to better, and so suddenly that not by time her action is expressed, how lucent in herself must she have been? And what was in the sun, wherein I entered, apparently not by color, but by light, I, though I call on genius, art, and practice, cannot so tell that it could be imagined. Believe one can, and let him long to see it. And if our fantasies too lowly are for altitude so great, it is no marvel, since over the sun was never eye could go. Such in this place was the fourth family of the High Father, who forever sates it, showing how he breathes forth and how begets. And Beatrice began, give thanks unto the Son of angels, who to this sensible one has raised thee by his grace. Never was heart of mortal so disposed to worship, nor to give itself to God with all its gratitude was it so ready. As at those words did I myself become, and all my love was so absorbed in him that in oblivion Beatrice was eclipsed. Nor this displeased her, but she smiled at it, so that the splendor of her laughing eyes my single mind on many things divided. Lights many saw I, vivid and triumphant, make us a center and themselves a circle, more sweet in voice than luminous in aspect. Thus girt about the daughter of Latona we sometimes see, when pregnant is the air, so that it holds the thread which makes her zone. Within the court of heaven, whence I return, are many jewels found, so fair and precious they cannot be transported from the realm. And of them was the singing of those lights, who takes not wings that he may fly up thither, the tidings thence may from the dumb await. As soon as singing thus those burning suns had round about us whirled themselves 3 times, like unto stars neighboring the steadfast poles, ladies they seemed, not from the dance released, but who stop short, in silence listening till they have gathered the new melody. And within one I heard beginning, when the radiance of grace by which is kindled true love, and which thereafter grows by loving, within thee multiplied, is so resplendent that it conducts thee upward by that stair, where without reascending none descends. Who should deny the wine out of his vial unto thy thirst, in liberty were not except as water which descends not seaward? Fain wouldst thou know with what plants is enflowered this garland that encircles with delight the lady fair, who makes thee strong for heaven. Of the lambs was I of the holy flock, which Dominic conducteth by a road, where well one fattens if he strayeth not. He who is nearest to me on the right, my brother and master was, and he Albertus is, of Cologne, I Thomas of Aquinum. If thou of all the others wouldst be certain, follow behind my speaking with thy sight, upward along the blessed garland turning. That next effulgence issues from the smile of Gratian, who assisted both the court in such wise that it pleased in paradise. The other, which nearby adorns our choir, that Peter was, who, even as the poor widow, offered his treasure unto holy church. The fifth light, that among us is the fairest, breathes forth from such a love that all the world below is greedy to learn tidings of it. Within it is the lofty mind where knowledge so deep was put that, if the true be true, to see so much there never rose a second. Thou seest next the lustre of that taper, which in the flesh below looked most within the angelic nature and its ministry. Within that other little light is smiling the advocate of the Christian centuries, out of whose rhetoric Augustine was furnished. Now if thou trainest thy mind's eye along from light to light, pursuant of my praise, with thirst already of the eighth thou waitest. By seeing every good therein exults the sainted soul, which the fallacious world makes manifest to him who listeneth well. The body, whence 'twas hunted forth, is lying down in Kildaro, and from martyrdom and banishment it came unto this peace. See farther onward flame the burning breath of Isidore, of Beda, and of Richard, who was in contemplation more than man. This, whence to me returneth thy regard, the light is of a spirit unto whom in his grave meditations death seemed slow. It is the light eternal of Sigier, who, reading lectures in the street of straw, did syllogize invidious verities. Then, as a horologe that calleth us what time the bride of God is rising up, with matins to her spouse that he may love her, wherein one part the other draws and urges, ting, ting, resounding with so sweet a note, that swells with love the spirit well disposed. Thus I beheld the glorious wheel move round, and render voice to voice, in modulation and sweetness that cannot be comprehended, excepting there where joy is made eternal. Dante and Beatrice ascend once again, this time to the sphere of the sun. Now remember, the sun represents God, represents the creator of all things, but it is not him himself, not even for Dante. This is not the highest sphere, and the sun is not God. It's just another sphere. But those souls that are closest to the sun are those whom the High Father keeps in constant bliss, showing them how he breathes, how he begets. These are the souls that are literally illuminated by God. The philosophers, the theologians, the great thinkers of Christendom who have been given knowledge by God of how he works, how he loves. And Dante gets to meet a bunch of these souls, many of whom are among the great writers of Western civilization. Thomas Aquinas is the one who introduces them to him, once again, just kind of knowing what Dante wants in his heart without him saying it. Says, you want me to identify them? Well, of course I'll do that. And he identifies himself, Thomas Aquinas, his master, Albertus Magnus, King Solomon, Dionysius, Boethius, St. Isidore of Seville, and Bede, who was an English monk. There's nothing much else to say about these souls except that they are now here in harmony, close to that source of light and life that they studied and desired to understand so much their entire lives. I want to point to the identity of one of these souls, though, as especially important. Not because it's more important than the others, but because it's different than the others. And Mark Musa identifies this last soul as Sigurd of Brabant, who he says was a distinguished Averroist philosopher who taught the University of Paris, which was located at the Street of Straw. His belief that the world had existed from eternity and doubt in the immortality of the soul involved him in a lengthy dispute with his colleague Thomas Aquinas and eventually led to charges of heresy. So, this guy, Sigurd, and Thomas Aquinas, who's now speaking and introducing him, they were rivals in life. Thomas Aquinas was against him and his beliefs, and Sigurd presumably against Thomas's. And yet, here they are. Even after Sigurd had been charged with heresy, they both made it to heaven, where not only is Sigurd quite content to be living forever in the light of the sun, but Thomas Aquinas is also pleased to introduce him as a friend, to dance and sing in a circle with him, as Dante describes. Does this mean that his heresy wasn't that bad? No, not necessarily. Does this mean that people with differences of opinion on major issues can still be friends? Sure, but I mean, who hasn't heard that one? No, what I notice is that he made it to heaven in a world where Dante's very harsh with heretics. There was a whole circle of hell for them, if you remember. But this guy made it to heaven. How? I'd imagine that it had something to do with fighting with Thomas, with getting those charges of heresy. He, unlike the heretics in hell, changed his mind. Both Thomas and the church at large loved his soul enough to tell him when he was wrong and encourage him to change. And he actually did. That is a very loving relationship. And so it is in heaven as well. That's all for today, though. I'll see you tomorrow.